Single word search. Okay, let's try some search expressions, and these are taken right out of the help file. If you want to follow along with me, I am right where it says how to search on a single word, a group of words or a phrase. And I'm going to be taking these examples one at a time, and I may add a few little extra searches in here because it's easy to do, once you get started with these searches, to start getting off on a tangent and trying other things, and so that's kind of what I want you to do. So, let's get started. The first one is to search for a specific word, and the word here is seek, and you just press enter and you get a listing of all verses in the entire scriptures where the word seek is found. Now there's 335 items. And so obviously this is way too many. We're going to talk about how to fix that as we go along. But, right now, the goal is just to do some searches. Okay, so let's try multiple words. Seek, find, knock, opened. There has to be a space between the words, and you also have to use whole words. If you want to use partial words, you have to put an asterisk at the end of a word, but we just want whole words for now. So, here's all the verses where these four words all appear in the same verse. Now these words don't have to all appear in the same order. They just all have to be present, but they're all there. Seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. Say you want to search one word or the other. We'll do that. The word banner and the word ensign are synonyms in the Bible. It's the same word in Hebrew, translated differently in English. So, we'll talk about that next. Just clear the search, and now we're going to do a search for banner or ensign. Okay, here in Psalm chapter 60 verse 4, we have got banner. Down here, Isaiah 5:26, we have ensign. People have been requesting a way to automatically search for synonyms. I haven't figured out a way to do that yet. But if you know that two words are synonyms, you can ask for one word or the other. Okay, here's where we have to search for an exact phrase, grace for grace in quotes. You get 4 matches. But if you just type in grace for grace without quotes, you get 61 matches. You're going to get 60 items like if I have found grace in thy sight and the Lord said to Moses, I will do that thing with that was spoken, for thou hast found grace in my sight. But that's not what we're looking for. And plus, we have to go through 61 items. But what we want is the exact term grace for grace, so we put this in quotation marks and do another search. By the way, to do a search, you can hit the search button, you can also press enter, which is probably the easiest. Okay, so here we have all received of his fullness grace for grace. We got that in the Gospel of John, we've got it in Helaman, we've got it in section 93. The Doctrine and Covenants. Now there's also the phrase grace to grace. I don't know if you knew that or not. Section 93 mentions grace for grace and also grace to grace. Here's something we can try. You can say grace for grace or grace to grace. You can take two exact phrases and you can put the word or in between them. These are all the same verses we had before plus the grace to grace verse. It's always a good idea to check your results. And if you don't get as many searches as you expect, or if you get too many, you might want to check your search and check your results and see why you didn't get what you expected. Okay. Now here's another one. Receive or received. Instead of all that extra typing, there's another easier way to do that. You can just do this. Just say receive, followed by an asterisk. I don't want to look through 1,000 items. That's way too many. This is why we have the filter text box. We'll be talking about that in a second. Filters. Here's a good place where we can use filters. What do we receive? It says we receive or received of his fullness or the fullness. So, we could type that down in the filter box. We could filter by fullness. The purpose of the filter is to filter the results. The results are still saved in the program, but they're filtered out and hidden so you only see part of the results. So, let's filter it and say received his fullness. Spelling. There's one thing you notice if you study the scriptures a lot, and that is there's some words which are spelled funny in the scriptures, and the word fullness is one of them. You can spell it with one L or two L's. If you want to know which is the one used most commonly, it is the one with one L. The only place the two L's is used is in the lectures on faith. And the reason I know this is because of this program. I decided one day to look at that. I thought, wait a minute. I don't spell fullness with one L. But some scriptures do. Is it just Joseph Smith? So, anyway, we have his fullness. And now it's still found 908 items. It's showing 15 of them and 893 of them are hidden, which means they're sitting in the background. We can call them forth anytime we want just by changing the filter. Okay, so, we've got his Old Testament fullness. Having received of his fullness and his grace. But what about the fullness? We could put that in our filter too. To apply a filter, there's two ways to do that. You can press the filter button, or you can press the Enter key. I find the Enter key is usually the fastest and easiest. Okay, so here we've got 35 items. Either received of the fullness or received of his fullness. Okay, clear the searches and do this. Now, let me illustrate something I talked about a minute ago. We'll look for the word fullness with two L's. The only place you see it is in the lectures on faith. And there are 15 places. If you type fullness with one L, you get 117 places including the King James Bible. So, that's just a little thing to remember. As if things weren't bad enough, don't forget the British spelling of words like color, labor, and honor. In the Bible, they end in OUR, but in the Book of Mormon and D&C, they end in OR. And it came to pass. Okay, now, here's another one. Kind of a little game you can play to learn about the scriptures, the phrase "and it came to pass." It appears 1,525 times in the scriptures. The purpose of this study is not to look at every single reference but to see how common this phrase really is. And also show you some of the filtering techniques that we have. If you want to see where it says "and it came to pass" in the Old Testament, you can filter O-T. Everything that's in the database has a volume, a book and a verse in the data tab key, so you can search by any of those. You wouldn't want to search by Old Testament or OT, but you can filter your results by specifying OT in the filter box. To see the abbreviations, see the help file, or go to the menu bar and click Window, Useful Tables, then click on the Abbreviations tab. The names of the various volumes, Old Testament, New Testament, etc. are tricky to remember, but there aren't very many. The books in the Bible use the common abbreviations. The books in the Book of Mormon are spelled out. If you searched for faith, and wanted to see where the word appeared in Matthew, you could put faith in the search and Matthew in the filter. You could put faith Matthew or faith and Matthew in the search. Under either method, you get 14 verses returned. The idea is not to get the exact, perfect query the first time, but to play around and experiment, and search the scriptures like you've never been able to do before. It's easy to get distracted, so now, back to Genesis. If you want to filter your search by Genesis, for example, you could just spell out the full word Genesis. If you want a specific verse in Genesis, then you could just say GEN for the abbreviation for the verse. For example, Genesis chapter 4, you'd say GEN space 4, followed by a colon. Okay, so, if you want to see where this is in the Old Testament, O-T. And the reason why you put that dash in there is because there's a lot of words that normally contain the letters OT or NT for New Testament, and to make it easier for the search engines to distinguish between those, we use O-T and N-T. Just so there's no confusion. So, we filter "and it came to pass" by OT. We got 336 items. I never knew that phrase was even used in the Old Testament. Check the New Testament NT. There are 60 items. There's the one we all know about, the one in Luke in the Christmas story, "and it came to pass." Where is it? There is something about all the world being taxed. We're going to tax the whole world. So, we know what's in the New Testament. We know what's in Luke and we know it's about being taxed. This is what we put in our filter. The phrase "and it came to pass" appears 60 times in the New Testament. But, how about the Book of Mormon? It took a little while because the filter had to go through 1,500 items manually. It didn't use the database, which is optimized for fast searching but just looking through the memory of the program. In most cases, the filter doesn't have to be fast because the database search query doesn't always return 1,500 items, nor do we want it to. Now we search in the D&C. There were 4 in the D&C. How about the Pearl of Great Price? P-G-P. There are 53 items in the Pearl of Great Price. Not an or. Okay, next search. We're back to our banner or ensign. If you don't want to spell out banner or ensign, or maybe you don't know how to spell it, you can just type out BAN asterisk or ENS asterisk. So, here you get your results, 237 items. Banner or ensign. We haven't talked about this yet, but back to the word seek. There's a lot of them in the scriptures. You've got 338 items. Say, you want the word seek but you don't want verses that use the word find. Let's do the search for seek not find and we get 315 matches. Okay, we've narrowed down a little bit. Okay, say we want seek or find. We already talked about seek and find. You can say seek. Okay, you can say seek and find, or you can say seek, find. In the search box, and is implied. It doesn't matter is you code it in the search box or not. Suppose you want where Moses said either seek or find. So, you put parentheses around this to group it. So, seek or find and Moses. Now notice also you don't have to use uppercase. There's one place where Moses said seek or find. I suppose you could say not Moses. You can say something like not Moses and not Jesus. I don't know why, but I'm just trying to illustrate. So, there's the word seek and there's a word find. Okay, let's see, here's one more. Seek, find, knock. The word and is implied. This works like a Google search. Pretty much if you're familiar with doing complex Google searches, this should be pretty much second nature to you. But here's a verse draw nearer to me. You don't want that one. So, you say not draw and the filter drops off that verse. This is a way of cutting down on the amount of data that you'll see.